This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, March 21st, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on the context of those stories, and help each other understand.
Today, Andy Beach tells us about virtual influencers and feedback from you.
Yes, indeed. I'm Jason Howell.
I'm Huyen.
Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. The Atlantic released a tool to enable anyone to run a keyword search on the LibGen database, 7.5 million books and 81 million research papers. LibGen was used by Meta to train its AI systems, and the searchable database represents a snapshot taken on January 2025. Now, the tool is timed with the release of court documents that are tied to the case. You may have heard of, over the last several months, a case brought by actress Sarah Silverman and many other people in the entertainment industry. It was filed originally in July of 2023, and it alleges that Meta stole or pirated copyrighted content without permission. Now, the court documents show how Meta considered licensing books and content to build the database. They considered going that route, but when faced with the cost and also the amount of time that it would take to actually do that at scale, they instead decided to BitTorrent much of the content. Now, as we know, at this point by now, we know so much about BitTorrent. We've all, had some sort of introduction to it in the last 20 years. I don't know how long it's been around, but torrenting protocol implies that not only did Meta access pirated material through this, it also likely distributed it to peers throughout the process, which is explicitly illegal according to U.S. copyright law. One of the big, bugaboos around BitTorrent with copyrighted material is that when you're downloading it, you're also uploading it. You're sharing it to other people. Emails from Meta employees working on the project detailed their hesitation in offering compensation for even one book, as that one move would weaken their fair use argument. Other emails reference the removal of lines, referencing ISBN numbers, copyright statements, and all rights reserved. So going way out on a limb to kind of clean up the tracks, clean up the database, as it were. Authors, as you can expect, out of their minds about being represented in the database. Many want to be removed, others want to be compensated, or both. Overall, there's a general feeling of those speaking up about this that they do not want their creative work being used without their consent. And so I opened up the tool and started doing some searches of my own. So of note, Tom Merritt's books, Citadel 32 and Pilot X, are in fact represented in the database. Tom said in Discord earlier today, quote, "I am honored to be there. All my books are Creative Commons. My belief is these are transformational uses. Would I like to get paid for this use? Sure, but I don't believe I'm being ripped off by not." So Tom's in there. Also, my co-host on AI Inside, Jeff Jarvis, he has a number of books. I reached out to Jeff because I found all of his books there. He said, quote, "I would honestly be miffed if I were not included. I write to be read. I podcast to be heard. Both are about putting ideas to the out to join in a greater discussion. So I'm glad my work is included." Jeff did clarify that how these works are acquired is kind of a different story from whether they should be represented in training data sets to begin with. And real quick, before I throw it over to you, Wynn, apparently I wrote a bunch of cryptography and chemistry journals, which I had no idea I had done, but apparently I did because my name's in there.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you bet. What do you think? What do you think about this? There's so many directions we can go here.
There's a lot of things. So number one, I think I applaud and very much admire, I think, both Tom and Jeff's perspectives. And I think that there's an ideal, right, of fair use, of sharing knowledge and putting both creative works and more factual, research, hard knowledge out there for people to use and fair use. I think that's always the ideal that a lot of us, especially in tech, really go for. I have a big problem with how this was done from the technical side. And this actually reminds me of the email that we talked about yesterday about how companies like to say that so-and-so regulation, so-and-so thing will slow our innovation. And this really feels like that. It felt like there was so much internal pressure on Meta to create this. And to be fair, and I forgot who said it, but that high quality information, high quality trained model. And that is important. And that's a good thing, I think, focusing on high quality information. I do think this, you can see in, the different evidences, like the different, like internal communique, like just the behaviors that while you can always argue, and there probably is some like maybe we'll call it pure, very, innovation, like the pure joy and drive to create something new that could help the world. I feel like to be fair, there's probably always some semblance of that in a lot of these kind of stories, a lot of these kind of efforts. But you can also see where they were cutting corners. They were trying to find the most strategic way to get the most amount of high quality data. And I cannot help but see, especially since they're trying to cut costs, cut time, that part of, unfortunately, the drive to innovation is not just this altruistic thing. It's because profits, it's because competition, and it's because, okay, well, if we don't compete, we're going to lose out here, which, to be fair, like it's a for-profit business ultimately. And, like even if for-profit businesses do open source, kind of common tools, ultimately there's got to be some kind of ROI for them on this. And so I'm very much of many minds about this. I do appreciate the idea, like the kind of ideals that Tom and Jeff speak for. I am very disappointed how Meta has handled this. And I again, this is that thing that people are trying to excuse often with slowing our innovation. So we're going to cut some corners. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my...
It really does, like you say, tie into what we were talking about yesterday, the kind of automatic response of like, well, you don't want to stand in the way of innovation, right? And these are tools that, like, I truly believe that these are tools that have, that this is the extension of where technology is headed right now.
Yeah.
And there is a large part of me that doesn't want to stand in the way of what they are capable of, because it's really difficult to do that. Like any time in history when you want to stand in the way of progress and the way the direction things are headed, it's really hard to stand in the way of that. And B, like, do we shortchange ourselves for the possible benefits, the potential, kind of impacts, greater impacts and good that something like this could have if we put artificial stunts into it? So, but like what you're saying, as far as the profit engine of these companies, right? Like there is, I believe, like a need for things to improve and be better and impact mankind in really wonderful ways. Maybe that's a rose-tinted way to look at it. But there is also, in looking at this, you can see the desire that's driving this is maybe not as much that as it is, how do we compete in the marketplace and offer a product that's going to make us a mountain of money, or make us the symbol of success in this regard? That profit engine that drives this kind of adds an icky layer. And as a creative, I also kind of agree with what Tom and Jeff are saying. Do I care if my music, let's say, the music that I produce or my tech review videos, end up in these databases and I believe get turned into a transformative work on the other side? I don't, but I can also understand why creatives might feel that way. And so, like you said, you're of two minds. I'm also of two minds. It really depends on the day and how I'm feeling, how I actually feel about this as a whole, zoomed out.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And it is funny. I appreciate what you said, that, we kind of want technology to advance and make things better for everyone. And that if we always try to do it as safely and as covering all of our bases as possible, we might not ever get there. And sometimes I think my opinions make me feel a little bit like a Luddite. Like I guess I'm a tech person, but I'm also a Luddite in many ways. I do think there's something interesting here, though, at scale. Like I think on small scales, it's easy to say, like, be able to ask an individual creator, how do you feel about this? Do you want to be included? But there's an interesting kind of effect of scale here. And they actually, I think they mentioned it, just like they just want to scale up really fast. And we hear this a lot in like tech companies, is like, everything is about scale. How can we do things as big as possible? Progress. And I think the problem is that, and I've mentioned this before and used this phrase before, that a lot of times these are like opening, it's the whole genie out of the bottle, Pandora's box, is that a lot of times when people take certain actions, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. It would be hard to, for example, put back in those stripped out ISBNs, copyright statements, and all rights reserved. It's easier to put it in the first time. It's really hard to go and find it later. So Yeah, it's interesting. Like if we had sorted all this out beforehand, I've been like, hey, this is a great idea. High quality information is going to make everybody's life, every model better. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
there is some sort of like icky quality or tainted quality to the matter at which it was procured.
Yeah, how it was done.
And I think that really paints a thick layer of black paint over kind of the fair use, the benefits outweigh, the means, all of those arguments. Yeah. It's a little harder to argue that when you go to the source and you go, but how did you get this stuff to begin with? Maybe start there. And then we'll go to, what are the overall benefits, and maybe end up, recreating a system where people feel like, yes, it can be high quality and it feels fairly done. And we haven't even touched on the right to read, which is another aspect of this. If I, as a human, read a bunch of books and then write something based on my knowledge of the book, why is that any different than a machine reading a bunch of books and then creating a thing? And that's a whole different story, which we don't have the time to get into. But that's all that's to say, this is an incredibly complicated scenario. It isn't just as easy as saying it's copyright and so it can't happen. And courts will decide on this in the coming years. The next couple of years, we're going to see some court judgments on this that are really either going to change the rules as they are right now or solidify what's happening right now. It's going to be a very interesting couple of years based on cases like this.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll keep being with you to help you understand how it all goes down.
Indeed.
Well, DTNS is made possible by you, the listeners. Thanks to Chris Beneteau, Jeffrey Wilkes, Alo, Adam L., and welcome new patron, Douglas. Welcome, Douglas.
Golf clap. Welcome, new patrons. Welcome to you all. All right, there's more that we need to know today. Some pretty consequential stories in today's briefs. Let's get right to them.
Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that Apple CEO Tim Cook has lost confidence in the head of the company's AI efforts, John Giandrea, in the shadow of Siri's undelivered promises and lack of progress since last year's WWDC presentation. Mike Rockwell, head of the Apple Vision Pro project, will take over the position in his place. The vacant AVP leadership role will be filled by Paul Mead, Vision Pro hardware engineering lead. Rockwell's experience bringing the Apple Vision Pro to market is driving Apple's decision to put him in charge of righting the Siri ship. Apple has, unsurprisingly, been targeted by a class action lawsuit taking it to task for its delayed Apple Intelligence features, charging false advertising and unfair competition.
Yeah, so Rockwell, I love that name, Rockwell. I mean, he basically saw Apple Vision Pro from 0 to 1, right? From concept to creation. And that puts him in a very unique position in Apple, being probably one of the very few people there that has led a product like that from 0 to 1. Now, whether AVP is like the pinnacle of Apple innovation and a success or a failure or whatever, that's a whole other story. But he's probably in a really good position to do something with this versus others. So
yeah, absolutely. There's always something to regardless of whether something is a success or failure, there's always lessons in retrospection when it comes to tech products. So 100%, I can totally see why.
Yeah, totally. Section 230, the gift that keeps on giving, the amendment to the Communications Decency Act of 1934 that shields online platforms from being held responsible for the content that's shared on it by others, is potentially about to face its biggest challenge, according to the Information's Paris Martineau. A bill is set to be introduced as soon as next week that aims to put an expiration date of January 1st, 2027 on Section 230 with the intention, actually, the stated intention, according to one article I read from people close to this, of forcing the tech industry to negotiate around reform ahead of a potential repeal. So they were saying, basically, this isn't about getting rid of it entirely, I would put in parentheses, yet, but about bringing the tech industry to the table so we can find better terms and reach an agreement. And with increased support for repeal from both sides of the aisle, along with the U.S. president's longstanding support of its repeal, we really could be looking at major change to how the internet works in the United States. And we aren't going to have to wait too long for that.
Wow. It'll be wow.
A little nervous.
A little bit, just a little bit. Well, Google is bringing smarter search to Gmail for Android, iOS, and the web, using AI to surface results that are more relevant to users than before. Instead of just getting a simple chronological list or top results, the new approach factors in recency, most clicked messages, and frequent contacts, among other signals. This should result, according to Google, in a cleaner, more effective surfacing of emails in Gmail search. So if you are interested, look for the most relevant dropdown to activate the new search when it arrives any day now.
Yeah, I've noticed that in Google search. Sometimes I do a search and it ends up just giving me a bunch of junk, and maybe something's up there, but it's still kind of harder to find inside of Gmail. So I'm looking forward to this because I do a lot of searching of my Gmail nowadays. So.
Ditto and ditto.
Yeah. Anthropic's Claude 3.7 Sonnet chatbot is now web search capable for paid users in the US, at least for now. Anthropic has been behind in the move toward real-time search data, as it has held up until now a firm line in keeping its model, quote, self-contained. But as you know, market pressure comes along and changes minds a lot of the times. And in this case, seems to have turned the tide. You know, major competitors like OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini have integrated search products into what they offer. So support for this feature for free users and those in other countries is definitely in the works. That's coming sometime soonish down the line.
Well, there you go, market pressure. And I have to say, I've really enjoyed Claude, and I did like that it was self-contained. So we'll see I don't know how some of us feel about it when this rolls out. It's a good thing. A new initiative by game developers like Nintendo, Microsoft, and EA Electronic Arts is addressing how games and peripherals are labeled to ensure accessibility features are highlighted for players. The Accessible Games Initiative defined 24 accessibility tags to be displayed in stores and on product pages to give players a sense of what features are offered. Things like input remapping for controls, text-to-speech, subtitles, narrated menus, and others are included. No timeline is in place at this point, so it could be a while before these tags begin to appear.
Can't argue that. Love communicating that more. And, 24 different tags represents, I think, a lot of aspects of these games. So I think people who truly have needs for these features are going to be really happy to actually see them and know about that in advance. I think that's a great move. Fujifilm introduced the GFX 100 RF. It's a 102 megapixel medium format compact camera designed for street and travel photography, has a fixed 35 millimeter f4 lens, a built-in 4-stop ND filter, which is a first for the GFX series, and a wide range of aspect ratio options, including widescreen, all accessible by a single aspect ratio dial. That's pretty neat. It's priced at $4,900, expected to launch sometime in April.
Oh my God, I want it, but it's $4,900. Oh,
there you go.
Save some pennies. Well, Apple is spending close to $4.5 billion on content for its Apple TV Plus streaming platform every year and losing $1 billion each year along the way, according to an anonymous source to the information. The report also shows that the service has around 45 million subscribers. So $1 billion is a lot of money. But for Apple, it's a small amount of the $391 billion in revenue the company saw for the year ending last September 24th. September 2024. I'm not sure why it's 2024. My bad.
Yeah, there you go. September 2024. Yeah, a rounding error more than anything, really. Kind of like, that's how I see it.
Peanuts. Well, those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper in the ongoing stories and follow up.
You may have heard of VTubers, virtual hosts of YouTube shows, but AI tools have powered a whole lot more. And Tom Merritt actually talked to Andy Beach about the rise of virtual influencers.
Andy, man, thanks for chatting with me today.
Yeah, of course. I found this to be a fascinating topic, so I definitely wanted to make sure I called it out.
By the end of this, all of us will be wondering if we're real or not. So yeah, this is fascinating. Tell me about how this has happened. What exactly is a virtual influencer? What defines it?
So there's a new company out there. It's a virtual avatar startup company founded by Isaac Bratzel. They've recently closed a $7 million seed investment, and they are doing what is called virtual influencers. Now, this is very similar to VTubers and the virtual influencers that are out there, but this is really taking it a step farther. they're taking the technology that we're more familiar with from the game engines, Unreal and some of the avatar and character creators, and they're making an incredibly lifelike real person. We've seen a number of games over the past few years hiring real actors to play parts and characters in the shows or in the games that they're making. But what he's done is take that same technology and he's created a virtual pop star effectively. And in fact, his first virtual avatar is someone named Lil Miquela. And there were a couple of facts that stood out about Lil Miquela. She has 50 million plus streams on Spotify. She's got 6 million followers on social media, and Time Magazine listed her as one of the 25 most influential people on the internet. She doesn't even exist. She's not a person. But in the article that Business Insider had, you'll notice that there are photos and pictures of the advertising campaigns that she was hired for. The HBO show Euphoria actually wanted to cast Miquela as a character in the show. And they had a $165 million budget, but they couldn't afford her because that didn't cover the render cost it would take to render the character for the show.
So the conventional wisdom that, these AI creations will be cheaper, not playing out in this case anyway.
Definitely not playing out in this case, but it is playing out in a world where they want to have a brand name or a brand character, but they don't necessarily need to attach it to a real person. And
and unlike sometimes VTubers is an actual person, but you don't see them. There's no person behind it.
This is a synthetic voice, a synthetic character. They're using a series of what they call proprietary 4D and machine learning training. So they are using a person to do some of the actions of this person, but they're doing it more in a motion capture style, and then applying it to this completely fictional person to do it. And right now, they've got sort of where the costs are, and that animation problem that I was mentioning. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's about $3,000 a second. For an hour of content, to have an hour of content with a character would be about $11 million. And so that's not a thing where we're going to be seeing, I think, in the near future, long form content that has these virtual characters. But I think it plays nicely for advertising and marketing, where you might want to hire a virtual person for it. And I could also see a number of YouTube-like channels adopting virtual news presenters or sports commentators that allow you to personalize a series of them. So it's not like you would just do one avatar. You might do a dozen, and you get to pick the person that presents your information to you.
How does that cost come down to make this cost effective then?
So what's interesting about AI technology in general is that for the last 3 years or so, about every 6 months, the price halves approximately on what it takes to do it. And it's a combination of multiple things. The AI is getting smarter and faster, so it becomes easier and cheaper to do it. We're finding new cost-efficient ways to do the same level of quality of render. But then also hardware is changing and adapting on about a yearly basis. So we're also getting a free sort of benefit of GPU performance increasing, or optimizing the CPU to GPU pipeline that is needed for moving around a lot of these frames very quickly.
And then you don't have to worry about them getting tired.
Yeah, exactly.
They won't get off message. But they're good enough that people bond to them and follow them, it sounds like, at least in the little Miquela case.
Yeah, I mean, they're really building following. So I think we're going to see a plethora of this, particularly, this started as sort of an agency project with that one idea. But what Bratzel is now doing is basically creating an entire startup that is going to be able to effectively be an avatar platform where you could come create your own virtual character that you then potentially hire out or you use for your productions.
And I know a lot of people are going to jump to the conclusion that eventually when it gets cheap enough, that replaces people. But I really don't think it does any more than having animation replaces live action. It feels like this will be a different kind of presenter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's actually also an opportunity. I think as the the ability to train these avatars, I think if you were a working actor, you could potentially train your own license, have your own licensed avatar, and then you could be working multiple jobs simultaneously. It reminds me of the days when a Hollywood actor would go shoot a commercial in Japan that was never going to see light of day in this market. There might be little niches where you can have a character of a known person out there as part of a bigger production.
Yeah. Well, this is fascinating. Thanks for bringing this to our attention, Andy. You've got a whole Substack where you talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I'm trying to write more and more these days, and you can find information about these kinds of parts of the business, but also streaming, advertising, and a lot around content creation and the intersection really of media technology and AI. And I'm over at abeach.substack.com.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
What do you want to hear us talk about on the show? One way to let us know is in our subreddit. Submit stories and vote on them at reddit.com/r/Daily Tech News Show.
All right, we end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom, and today we return to Tim Jar because he made our producer, Amos, laugh.
Am I the only one who can't keep track of the names of newest model from each AI company, let alone the differences between the new one and the most recent one? I was already struggling to keep track of which version iOS and Android and Ubuntu were on, and those were sequential or had fun names.
Yeah, it's kind of a challenge. It's pretty numbing, actually, because there are so many different companies championing their latest model, and every new one is the quote best, most game-changing thing ever. And yeah, there's so much catch up. It's hard to keep it all straight. Half of them are named the same thing, right? Like Deep Research. How many of them have something, a product called Deep Research? Like I can't keep it straight. It is what it is. Thank you so much for writing in, Tim. Thank you to Andy Beach for contributing to today's show. And thank you for being along for Daily Tech News Show. The show is made possible by our patrons on patreon.com/DTNS. DTNS has a live version called DTNS Live on YouTube and Twitch. And you can find details on that and so much more at dailytechnewsshow.com. We'll talk to you on Monday. Bye, everybody.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
This is the Daily Tech News. Sorry, it is, but I don't know why I wanted to put show in there. And I don't know. Let me just read the words that are on the screen. Ron Burgundy.